If you've ever watched someone disappear without a huge fight, without one clear moment that explains it, you know how strange it feels. One day, they seem present. Then, little by little, or sometimes all at once, they're gone. People who cut everyone off usually get explained in the easiest way possible: cold, avoidant, selfish, difficult. And sometimes the behavior is painful. Sometimes it does hurt people, but a lot of the time, the silence is covering something more complicated than a lack of care. For some people, relationships do not just feel close. They feel heavy, not in dramatic ways at first, more in the small moments that keep adding up until connection starts to feel like effort. A message comes in and their body drops before they even open it. They type a reply, delete it, type it again, then leave it there because even answering normally feels like work. Plans stay in the calendar, but as the day gets closer, they start wishing they could disappear. Nothing major has happened, but inside, the relationship already feels like something they have to carry. This is often how it begins. People who cut everyone off are usually not reacting only to other people. They are reacting to what happens inside themselves around other people. The overthinking after a conversation, the replaying of tone, the pressure to stay warm, stay understandable, stay available, even when they are already drained. After a while, even ordinary closeness starts to feel like emotional upkeep, and once it feels like upkeep, distance starts to look different. Not cruel, not powerful, just easier. Most people don't read it that way. People assume that cutting someone off means not caring, when in many cases, it comes from caring in a way that has become exhausting. The person is not detached. They are saturated. Too many interactions that pulled energy out of them. Too many relationships where they felt responsible for keeping things steady. Too much time spent staying emotionally reachable in spaces that never felt fully safe to relax inside. So the withdrawal usually starts before the disappearance does. Replies get shorter, then later, then harder. Sometimes they are already leaving, long before anyone notices they're gone. A lot of people think cutting everyone off is about not needing anyone. Often the deeper issue is how unsafe it feels to need people at all. Because needing people creates exposure. It means waiting for replies, hoping to be understood, risking disappointment, and caring enough for someone's behavior to affect your whole state of mind. For a person who already feels strained inside relationships, that kind of vulnerability can start to feel unbearable. Not because they feel too little, but because they feel too much in places that no longer seem able to hold it well. So silence starts to feel cleaner. Not better, not warmer, just cleaner. For some people, this goes back a long way. If closeness once meant criticism, unpredictability, guilt, emotional pressure, or having to constantly read the room, then relationships stop feeling simple. They become something to monitor, something to prepare for, something that can turn, even when nothing looks wrong on the surface. That kind of learning does not disappear just because life moves on. It follows people. So later in life, small things can hit with more force than they seem to deserve. A delayed reply, a change in tone, a plan that feels one-sided, a conversation that leaves them drained for reasons they cannot easily explain. None of those things has to be major on its own, but when someone already expects connection to cost them something, the smaller moments pile up fast. Then there comes a point where they stop wanting to explain. Not because they have no feelings about it, usually the opposite. Explaining starts to feel too exposing, too tiring, or too familiar. They do not want another conversation where they have to translate what hurts, soften it enough to be acceptable, and then wait to see whether the other person really gets it. At some point, disappearing feels more manageable than trying one more time to be clear. That is also why, in the moment, cutting someone off can feel strangely powerful. No mere waiting. No more reading into messages. No more wondering where they stand. No more carrying the relationship in their head when they are trying to sleep or just get through the day. For a while, silence can feel like relief. But relief is not the same as peace. The distance lowers the pressure, but it does not always bring calm. One part of them feels lighter almost immediately. Another part feels the absence. They may miss the person. They may feel guilty. They may even want contact back and still feel unable to reopen the door. So the silence becomes this strange mix of comfort and loss. Sometimes they care enough that staying connected feels harder than leaving. Sometimes they have been disappointed enough times that distance feels safer than hope. Sometimes they have learned that once they start needing too much from a relationship, they stop feeling steady inside themselves. That is not confidence. It is control. More specifically, it is the kind of control people reach for when they no longer trust repair. If they have had enough experiences where honesty changed nothing, where vulnerability made things messier, or where their feelings were treated like an inconvenience, they may stop believing that staying and talking is safer than leaving. So they choose what feels cleaner, and a lot of the people who do this are not people who leave too early. Often, they stay too long first. They tolerate things they should have named sooner. They keep trying to be fair, calm, mature, understanding. They tell themselves not to overreact. They keep showing up while becoming less and less present inside the relationship. Then, once the internal pressure becomes too much, they do not set a neat boundary in real time. They vanish. To everyone else, it feels sudden. To them, it feels overdue. Once you see that, the behavior reads differently. What looks like coldness can be accumulated disappointment. What looks like arrogance can be someone who stopped believing that speaking honestly would lead anywhere useful. What looks like indifference can be emotional fatigue, the kind that no longer has the energy to stay open in places that feel inconsistent, unclear, or quietly draining. That does not make every cutoff healthy. Some are impulsive, some are unfair. Some come from avoidance more than clarity. But if you only look at the final silence, you miss what is feeding it. Often the real issue is not just other people. It is what closeness activates. Hyper-awareness, emotional labor, the feeling of always having to manage how much you say, how much you need, how much you show, and how much disappointment you can absorb before you finally pull away. For someone who has lived with that long enough, distance can start to feel like the only place where their system unclenches. Not happy, not healed, just less activated. And over time, that can settle into identity. They start calling themselves private, hard to reach, better off alone, very selective, not interested in drama. Sometimes that is true. But sometimes it is also a story built around exhaustion. Look at it that way, and the whole pattern changes. Less attitude, more history, less rejection, more self-protection, less I don't need anyone, more I don't feel safe in what closeness keeps becoming. Sometimes the cutoff is not really about ending a relationship. Sometimes it is about ending a state. And when silence becomes the fastest way out of that state, it starts to make sense why someone would choose it, even when it costs them more than they admit. If this explains something you felt or seen, there's more to uncover. Sometimes the real question is not why they left. It's what made staying feel unbearable.